The original Game Boy had its fair share of shooters. Sadly, the cramped screen and relatively limited power of the console meant that the vast majority of them ranged from average to complete rubbish. One of the games that has stood out from this group and introduced some interesting wrinkles into the standard shooter gameplay was a strange little game from Japan called Mercenary Force. The first thing that hits you about the game is the aesthetics, which is all the more impressive when you consider that it's a Game Boy title. Note that I am not talking about the technical side of the graphics here. Screenshots and footage obviously show a game that does not exactly push the system to its limit. Rather, it's the coherency of the game's presentation. Mercenary Force is drenched in traditional Japanese influences, from the art style to the music. Most of the mischievous enemies you encounter are straight out of Japanese mythology, whilst your player characters are always identifiable, even on the small screen. Note that I said characters, plural. This is the gameplay tweak that makes Mercenary Force feel so fresh. At the beginning of the game, you create a squad of 4 mercenaries to fill out your team. You can select from the servant, the ninja, the monk, the samurai, and the mystic. All of these characters have their own strengths and weaknesses, and have specific costs to hire. So you have to consider both what sort of team you want to roll with, and how to balance the books in the process. This brings us to the other interesting gameplay quirk, the formations. Not only do you customize your team, but once you're in the field you can change formation on the fly. There are 4 to choose from, and they're all useful in certain situations. The formation of the forest is a defensive stance that protects characters at the back at the expense of firepower. The formation of the fire is an aggressive formation that lets you fit through tight spots, but leaves your characters vulnerable to attack. The formation of the mountain is pure offense, creating a wall of fire that destroys everything in its path, at the expense of maneuverability. Finally, the formation of the wind is a balanced formation that helps spread your firepower out. Now, don't get mistaken, this isn't a complicated game. There are tweaks to the standard shoot 'em up formula, sure, but the core of the game is satisfying shooting. The reason the game works so well is that these tweaks are implemented well enough that you quickly become accustomed to them and forget that they're there. Shifting formations becomes as instinctual as chasing power-ups around the screen in Raiden, or flipping a ship over in Ikaruga. It's actually surprising that this game was released virtually unchanged outside of Japan, given how straight-arrowed its subject matter is. If you had a friend with one of those 50-in-1 cartridges back then, you've probably tried this game at some point. Give it another chance now, and you'll find a surprisingly layered game for such an early Game Boy release. Double points if you can hunt down a Japanese copy, if only for the gorgeous box art.